Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Movement Mastermind. I'm Cheryl Lotzer, happy to be your host today, joined by Vern Schellinger, and we are happy to answer your job search questions. And we just were having a little pre-chat with In, who was asking us about salary. She had applied for a job a while back and had put a certain salary that was, she felt a little bit higher than maybe what the range was because she had heard from the incumbent what the range was. And so she just went a little bit above and hasn't heard back and was wondering in following up with the organization if she should lower her expectations and say, hey, well, I know I said X, but I'm really open to Y. And my recommendation was no, just stick to it right now because you never know, right? There could be other things going on. And once you drop your salary, they're not required to pay you any more.
And if anything, they may come back saying, refilled it, or they say, they may say, we're still, looking for it, but they maybe at that time they could mention it on their end. But
if that was an issue for them, they would say something. Oh, well, you mentioned X and we really can only do Y. That's different. Yeah. Because the X that you mentioned in was not $50,000 above their range. It was like a little bit, like 10, so that's usually within striking distance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, most employers, if you ever see, by the way, if you ever see I should mention this actually. I haven't given this piece of advice yet because this is an up to the moment kind of piece of advice. As you all know, there are a lot of companies now that are posting salary, okay, for DEI reasons, right? Pay transparency. Okay, so this has to do with that. When a company posts a range or one number, particularly if they only post one number, often they can go a smidge above that. Okay, call it like the rubber band stretching number, usually about 10K over whatever it is ish. So if they say 150, they could probably go to 160. They say 120, they could probably go to 130, that kind of thing. So just know that. All right. So if you're offering, if you're saying when they post their number, if they say, are you okay with that number? You can say, well, I noticed you mentioned 120. I'm actually looking for 130. Would that fit your budget? Right. So just be aware of that. Or even if they don't ask you, if they post it and they don't say anything in the interview, you can still proffer that. It's okay. Just don't go well above that. But usually there's a little bit of squishy room.
And from my experience in actually being in those conversations, with the hiring manager and everybody else, and sometimes finance and accounting and the budget, so forth and so on. When somebody really impresses you as the candidate, and that's the candidate you really want.
Yep.
Yeah, you pretty much always lean towards, well,
yes.
What can we do?
What is it? What will it take to get them in the door?
Well, within reason, right?
Within reason. I mean, no, not ridiculous, but yeah.
You can't be
a little bit.
But typically, $5,000 or $10,000, as Cheryl said, if that's what it took to get the candidate that that the hiring manager and everybody on the recruiting team felt was the best qualified candidate, then you're going to do that. From an HR standpoint, you're always worried about, again, the internal equity. And, I've been here 5 years and I'm getting X, and now you bring this person in off the street,
that's right.
So you've got those kind of cultural and organizational issues to deal with. You hope that they don't cause a problem, but
and there's something else I don't think we've ever really talked about is this is an HR thing, and this what I'm about to share really mostly applies to organizations that have, number one, a real HR department that would know to do what I'm about to talk about, and also they're kind of large enough, like I would say at least 100 employees or more, and that would be this thing called salary bands. Okay. And so this idea of salary band is that the HR person will, take the levels of the position. So like, if you're a manager, if you're a director, if you're a vice president, there's a salary band. The salary band has a low point, a midpoint, and a high point. So maybe the range is, Vern, help me out here, 75 to 100 or something, right? Yeah. For the manager level, right? So what'll happen is when if they're going to post salary, or even if they don't, they know in their mind the percentage that they want to target. So we want to target this. We want to hire somebody at the midpoint or at the 75% or no more than the 75 percentile or whatever, which means, okay, we're going to hire, we want to target, 85 for this role. But we do have a little bit of squishy room, is what they're saying to themselves, a little bit, but they're not going to go above 100 because 100 is the top of the, in fact, they don't want to go to 100. Why? Because they want the person to feel like they have some growth. They don't want to hire somebody at the top range, because guess what? After year 1, after year 2, after year 3, if they're still at a manager level, they can't go above 100. So the employee will not get any salary bumps. So they really try to avoid bringing people in at the very, very top. I normally try like midpoint or something like that, kind of plus or minus midpoint. That's part of why sometimes you're going to see the squishy room, right? Where you can go a little bit above because the salary bands. Fern, do you want to talk about that at all?
No, that's pretty much, the way it works, and good companies, and most, as Shara said, with real HR departments, that's something that almost on an annual basis, you're going out to some type of compensation consultant and really scouring the market and making sure that you're remaining competitive within the marketplace in terms of your salaries. Obviously, that gets connected to your own individual organization's budget, because some organizations have more money than others and can afford to pay more. But you're always being sensitive to what the marketplace is, and again, it comes down to, payroll is a big expense for all companies, so it's something you've got to monitor and try to. I don't want to use the word control, but you need to monitor it, and be aware of where you're at in place in terms of the marketplace, and of course in getting the talent that you believe you need to make the organization successful. So it's kind of a lots of balls, and you're juggling them all at the same time.
And speaking of which, and I know I'm continuing on the salary thing because I think it's just an interesting topic for us to go with.
Yeah.
I want to jump off of what Vern just said. Okay, remember he just said that the people are assessing the marketplace. What does that actually mean? All right, let's talk about that. For most employers, they consider their marketplace their competition or their sector. You're in IT, you're in real estate, you're in a nonprofit associations, you're blah, 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 blah. Well, Vern and I both know that's actually a fallacy, okay? Because when you're going and you're competing for candidates, the candidate doesn't consider themselves necessarily just nonprofit. I mean, and maybe you do, but most people have a little bit of flexibility. So they might think of the region, or they might think of just, hey, this is just my salary. And the problem with all of that, right, is that the employer says, oh, well, in our marketplace, because they did a salary survey for other local nonprofits or whatever, we're in this range. Guess what? You're actually competing with the employer is competing with a much larger pool of candidates within that region, right? So what does that mean for you? Number one, you got to manage your expectations. Understand that the employer, when they are thinking about their salary bands, they are usually in a much more finite, they're looking at more finite, through a more finite lens, okay? So a local 501c3 nonprofit is going to be paying different than a national nonprofit. That's going to be different, paying different from a local tech firm and that kind of thing. So if you are a cross-sectoral person, meaning you're open to all kinds of things, just know that you're going to see salaries sometimes all over the place, because that employer is thinking about their pond. Who are the fish in my pond? Which is different. Even though it's a big pond in a big city, their little slice of it is the only thing that they're considering. So please be flexible about that. And also when you're doing your research, you may want to research different sectors if you can, be on salary.com or Glassdoor or whatever you can, just to understand, what does that pond look like? What if I were the employer, what might I be paying? And then try to adjust your expectations accordingly. Make sense? Vern, any comments about that?
No, I agree with everything you said, Shara. So,
Yeah. All right, so we've had a nice little deep dive in salaries. So Ty or Karen, any questions on your end?
As a job seeker, should you be looking at, like, if they have a staff listing or even a staff listing that has photos, should you be looking at the demographics of the staff as a job seeker and saying,
So- Mhm.
oh, this looks like a good place to work based on, these are all young people, these are older people. Is that any consideration at all, or just
Let's
throw your
just say-
name in the pond and go?
Obviously, that's a very personal choice, but in general, I'd say, no, like, just, I mean, people are people, right? Young, old, middle, black, white, brown, purple, green, whatever, like people are people. And so to the extent that, you can look, if you can find out about culture, if you can find out about other things, but in terms of the demographics, I'd be very open-minded about that because they'd want you to be open-minded, right? Nobody wants, people want to feel that everybody's inclusive, regardless of any sort of demographic. I would absolutely encourage you to not to ignore all of that. Just like you'd want them to ignore that with you, right? You wouldn't want them to look at you, oh, he is da, 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 and therefore we shouldn't. Same thing goes with you, right? If you're looking at their staff listing, you want to be as inclusive as possible. That'd be my opinion. Vern?
Well, again, to Cher's point, it's a personal, issue. If it's personally important to you that you work for a company that is diverse, then, you'd be, that would be one of the factors you're going to consider in, applying and accepting jobs. But that doesn't mean that a place of employment that's not diverse couldn't be a great fit for you and really, if you've got the skills that they need to make them successful, it still could be a great job. So it's a factor to consider, but again, there's a lot of factors to consider when you're, actually applying for the job, getting the interview, deciding whether to accept the job or not. So.
Look, and I will address this, because we, on this call, we often have a 50 plus crowd. Okay. So I'm just going to go there. Look, we are a graying country. Okay. There are statistics around, maybe, I think, well, there's a huge percentage of our population that is 50 plus. Okay. And lesser and less, there's a huge population that's millennials, but when we start getting to Gen Z, now we're getting to lower population numbers. So as time goes on, we're going to see much more of a tipping toward an older workforce. That said, employers still have I'll say a tendency to hire people between the ages of 25 and 45. Okay, that's sort of a natural kind of a thing just because of levels of career, for career leveling, whatever. And so as people get older and are still working, right, we're going to in general see companies that, have a younger workforce. So as we get older, it's going to seem like the workforce is younger and younger. It's not really, it's still kind of just the same band, but we're getting older and older, right? And so we need to be, I think, a little open, all of us need to be a little bit open-minded around that to say, this is just what's happening. And hopefully more employers will keep on bringing in folks that are older, because frankly, they're going to have to, because the population on the other side is not as populous, right? So I would just encourage you, Ty, to just be thinking, if you see everybody that's kind of younger, hey, that's just kind of what is, right? And so if you're comfortable with that, then I'd go for it, So. Karen, anything on your end?
I once had an interview for a company, and I can't even remember the name of it, but the woman in HR said, well, the average age here is 30.
Right.
And I knew I didn't have a chance.
Yeah, I
wonder, why would you say something like that to someone who's obviously older?
Yeah.
I think I'm going to guess that her intent was to say, look, we want to manage your expectations and let you know that we're a younger group. Are you okay with that? Without saying that, that's probably, if I assume best intent, I would assume that that's why I'm not saying she should have said that at all, but I think that's probably where her mindset was.
Yeah.
It was just a strange.
Well, and again, all of us have unconscious bias.
Right. That's right.
It's the way our brain works.
Yep.
And so, that particular person's bias might be,
Mhm.
well, how could this person possibly fit in
Fit
here?
in here.
Because we're all younger, okay?
Or assuming that you wouldn't want to fit in.
Or you're
assuming that
assuming
you-
that you want to foot
yeah.
in. So that could be the bias there. I think there's plenty of examples in organizations where a 60-year-old and a 30-year-old are on the same team and they're working
And
together.
they're just fine.
And then
Yeah.
they're
Right.
producing
And they're
very
helping
good
each
results.
other and learning from each other.
Right,
and,
right.
You know,
Yeah, so, so that, becomes, like I said, it can be a very individual type of, situation with that particular person or that particular company. I mean, the company culture might be, we only want younger people. We don't believe older people, can perform at this, do the work that we need to do, which is, it's just not true.
and I've heard the opposite too. As the millennials, look, this is years ago, and the millennials were coming, more in full force. I heard, I remember this particular situation of a client who was a Gen Xer, and he was like, I don't want to deal with the, current
Yeah.
generational blah, blah, blah. I only want to hire Gen Xers. I was like, wow,
Right.
people go both ways on this,
Yeah.
Ah. So anyway.
I have a question on, you know how now when you submit applications online, many of them are, it always asks you what your gender, whether you're disabled, whether you're a veteran. Is there a downside? Is there an upside? Is it completely neutral? How you answer, because sometimes it has a choice like prefer not to answer or, not to disclose or.
Yeah, they're not with rare exception, it's optional. The rare
Yeah.
exception is for government contractors. They have something called OFCCP requirements, and they're required to let the government know we have blah blah blah, right, people? Okay, but that's not your particular situation. So if you say choose not to disclose, totally fine, not going to affect you whatsoever. Now, for people who, for people who are who identify as somebody from a marginalized community, I'll frame it that way. These days, employers like that, right? Most employers, many employers, particularly in big cities, are looking to diversify their workforce. So if somebody checks the box to say, I identify as X marginalized community, the employer would be like, great, we want diversity. That does not mean you have to say anything. And if you choose not to say anything, will not hurt you. It's not about that. They're trying to put in one more step to let people know, the board, the government, whomever, hey, we have a diverse slate of candidates.
I mean,
for sure, and not only just employees, a diverse slate of candidates. Okay, because some employers actually have their own internal rules that says you must have. In fact, there's something called the Rooney Rule, if you want to look that up, which actually came from NFL, and it basically says, if I'm getting this correctly, you have to at least 3 of your candidates have to be from minoritized backgrounds, whatever. So if they're going off of that, and they see, oh, okay, we had a slate of 20 candidates, X percentage identified as from a minoritized community, we're good. Like that can be why they're doing that.
Unfortunately, in the NFL, it hasn't really worked very well. While the management and the NFL's commissioner and are really promoting that, the actual results of minority candidates getting the head coaching job is pretty pitiful. So when 60-70% of your workforce is minority.
I have a question in regards to age. You'll walk into the interview and one or more people in the interview team is about half the age that I am or somebody is. So should you address that at all? Should you address diversity or just go in there because I'm thinking wow, it's like, is this person really going to want to work with me?
I wouldn't address it. I think that's,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it would, if anything, it would make them feel very uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
And call them out on it. So I would that, to me, I would just go with your qualifications and be as energetic and hopeful and encouraging, and be your best interview self. And, hopefully they will appreciate you for who you are, right? Not what age you are.
And again, here's where unconscious bias can come in, because you could perform just as well in the interview and demonstrate to them that you've got all the skills to do the job. And some younger person, now it's between, you and another younger person, and, they opt for the younger person. And not that you weren't qualified or you couldn't do the job, but again, there's only one job, there's only one position open. So.
And I think that's something we have to address, because we haven't really had a lot of ageism talks here. There are a lot of reasons for the ageism bias, okay? And one of them has to do with the perception or misperception, whichever it is, that somebody who is older, who's applying for a job that traditionally would be held by a younger person, the perception is that older person is not going to be interested in the role. They're going to be bored in the job. They're going to leave quickly. Anyone of or they don't have the technology skills. I mean, there's a lot of different, right, perceptions and misperceptions around that. And so to the extent that you can overcome it, any ones of those, without acknowledging your age, but just to say, look, so interested in this role, really want to make a long-term commitment. You show your energy level, you show your technology skills, you indicate that you are, you're really in it, right, to win it. Even though the other side is true, that many people of younger generations these days are leaving jobs very quickly. A year and a half, that kind of thing, is a lot of mobility. So there is, again, a misperception around the tenure thing. But there is a perception around, hey, we want someone who's energetic. We want someone who's interested. We want someone who's at the quote right level for this role. So we believe, they don't say this, right? But we believe that a manager level job, right, should be for somebody who's at this stage of career. Well, that's not necessarily the case, but that's the perception. So to the extent that you can overcome that and showcase that you are looking to make a long-term commitment, that you're energetic, that you're ready to go, right? And this is that you're not just settling for the job. That's what they're really trying to avoid.
Yes.
They don't want someone who's coming in there and saying, yeah, I just need a paycheck. I'm just going to settle for this. And I'm going to kind of, lump my way through the job because it's a paycheck. They don't want that. They want to see commitment. They want to see energy, enthusiasm. I really want this job, and I want to commit to this job for a decent period of time. I'm going to be committed. That for any person, that's what they're looking for. And they're going to vet that in different ways, and sometimes having nothing to do with age. We could, as recruiters, we can look at somebody's background. Again, putting age aside, we can look at someone's background and say, gosh, this person has been a director for the last 10 years. Why would they want to go back to a manager level or a coordinator level or whatever? We're going to presume that either they applied to the wrong job, right? Or they're unemployed, they're just looking for a paycheck or whatever. Like there's just a mismatch there. We wonder about that. And so we tend to go for people who are more of a traditional fit, most of us. And so you want to overcome that if you walk a mile in the employer's shoes and say, oh, they're looking for someone with longevity. They're looking for someone who's going to be a fit, who's going to be interested in this role. If you can overcome that in the interview, that's going to set you apart and then help make them feel safer.
I guess I say that, but how, is there any specific tactics or anything that I can go to an employer? I mean, it's hard. It's kind of like, okay, I'm in the persuasive mode. How can I persuade them? Okay, this is what I want. I want a lower level job, or I'm pivoting. I no longer want this type of work. I want this type of work.
Right. And I know you've been doing that, Ty, right? You acknowledged
Yes.
that in your interview, in your cover letter. And I don't know exactly how, like at what point in the conversation you say it or exactly how you say it. But what I would do is, if you haven't done this already, address it really early on. Because look, when they get on that Zoom call, they're suddenly going to see who you are, right? And they're going to have a perception in the first 2.5 seconds, like, oops, he's more experienced than I thought he was, right? Okay, Ty, if you can appreciate that, I would go ahead right away and say, look, Mr. Employer, Ms. Employer, as we start out this conversation, look, you can see that I'm a more seasoned candidate than maybe you were expecting. I don't know. I want to let you know right off the bat, I have made an intentional career pivot. I am intentionally stepping back toward this customer service right level. I am not looking to be a director level anymore. I am not looking to stay in communications. That is not my world anymore. I am I found my passion. My passion is customer service. I really want to be at this individual contributor level. Please know I'm starting out this conversation by letting you know this, so that to alleviate any concern you might have that I am a misfit for this role, or that I just accidentally applied for this job, right? I really, okay, you have to, I think, address it quickly, affirmatively, positively, and then have them like, oh, thank you for letting me know. And then you move on.
And I
Vern, what
think
do you think?
the second piece of that tie to try to answer your question is then having your accomplishment stories and everything else really match exactly what the requirements are. And you're giving them proof that, yes, I can do this particular skill, this particular task, this particular, whatever I have deep experience in this particular area. And, you start out with what Shira said, and then you convince them, wow, he really does, he has all the skills, and this is really what he wants. And that's the best you can do, I think.
Well, the other thing that people keep telling me, and you probably said on this call, excitement and energy. I mean, just to tell them, hey, I'm really excited. This is why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions, topics, successes? Any successes you guys have had this past week or recently that you want to share? Anything that's worked for you, or interesting anecdotes?
We keep forgetting that this has only been a 3-day week.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
We've all been kind of on vacation a couple of those days.
that's true. Okay, this particular week may not be the week to ask that question. That is a good point. All right, so before this past week, anything that's gone on, and I realize it's summer too, so things are a little different right now, but anything just recently, last few weeks, just whatever.
Well, I think with me, I think it's just like, okay, I'm going to go fish in another pond. At this point, I mentioned like I'm looking more at government now, and because in other areas, I mean, looking up into Frederick, which is not far from it's probably 25 minutes from it. Look into that area. It's like, maybe there's another area, maybe the market's different up there, slightly different.
Yeah.
And I did experience that at the job fair up there in Frederick. I mean, when I went to the one in Montgomery County, it was packed. I went to 2 in Montgomery County, it was packed. I went to the one up there, lots of space.
It's true.
I don't know if that's an indication.
It is. I would say that the farther, in general, the farther away you get from a major metropolitan area, and Frederick is considered kind of a bedroom, even beyond a bedroom community for DC. Yeah. The sparser the candidate pool, and the more employers are like, oh, like I need somebody, right? They're not expecting to get somebody who lives in Silver Spring to come to Frederick, or someone who lives in Reston to come to Frederick, right? They're expecting people from the local area, and there just aren't as many people there. That's just a population thing. So if you're looking, so your competition's less, I guess is the point, and your chances could be a little bit stronger up there. Where do you live, Ty? Are you in Rockville?
I'm in Rockville, so it's not a bad. It's a reverse commute. But I was kind of shocked when I was talking to somebody and said, "Oh, if we have an employer candidate, if we have a candidate pool and there's like 10 people there," I'm like, 10? How about 50 to 100 or 75 or 200?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I'm noticing maybe because I don't know, for some reason the past 2 weeks I've noticed many more job postings that are what I'm looking for. So I wonder if like the employers have like gone, they've closed out their year, or and they're finally like realizing, hey, let's get that posted, let's try to have someone in by fall or something. Like, I don't know. Just like,
Yeah, generally speaking, employers don't go, and any individual employer doesn't typically go on that kind of cycle. The only things from a timing perspective, the only things to me that really affected are like the time of the year. So for example, the last 2 weeks of August or the last 2 weeks of December,
Mhm.
right? Okay,
Mhm.
people, right. But other than that, if there's an opening, there's an opening. They want to fill it.
Yeah.
They want to fill it, period,
Yeah,
regardless of when it
that's right.
happens.
Yeah.
And they might say, oh, we want somebody in by January 1st. Okay. But then they might push a little harder for that. But generally it's like, we got an opening, regardless of the time of year, they'll do a hire.
Well, sometimes I think if their budget is starting, they may have created a new position and it may be there for, that's what they were telling me in the government. Well, our budget year starts in July.
Well, that's true. That's the
So
government.
therefore,
Yes.
we're going to be hiring people because we have the money or the departments have the money.
That is very common in the government.
And
I'd say
I
that's,
would, I was told in Montgomery County that if they don't fill the positions, the Montgomery County is just going to take the positions away from them.
yeah,
They're not, they're just, if you can't fill them, they're gone.
that's government. Yeah.
Yeah.
You use it or lose it funding. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Fern, did you find any ebb and flow in your, it's just,
No,
you have an opening, you fill it.
You have an opening, you try to fill it. So, yeah. Yeah.
Any other topics, questions?
I know in the work that you and I do, Shira, I know we've talked to lots of people who think there's these lull periods or,
Yeah,
things like that. And I tell people get hired every day.
every day.
People get hired in
Every day.
December, right?
Absolutely. I meant
So-
many years ago, I had one of my best months in recruiting was in December. It's like,
Yeah.
you just, it's people hire all year long.
I may have asked this question before, but if you're in the same geographic area and relatively close to the employer, does it hurt or help to hand deliver a resume to quote the receptionist with the hiring manager's name on?
I wouldn't, yeah. Well, first of all, most people don't have receptionists anymore, but yeah, I think the only time that would actually be a help is for, I would say, very small local companies that are, I'm making this up, like your local, not like your local plumber, but your local, I don't know, a retailer, that kind of thing. Sure. But I'd say the kind of job that you'd be looking for time, I wouldn't go that particular route. Now, if it comes to sending a thank you note, might you want to mail it? You could, although a lot of people are working remotely these days. So yeah, I used to recommend going that extra mile and doing things a little more in person, but because of the remote working situation, a lot of people just won't see it, That's my opinion. Vern, I don't know if you have a different one.
No, yeah, I don't. And I mean, if you've applied for the job, the better route, as we've talked about it, find a champion and have somebody, call a hiring manager or get in touch with a hiring manager and, tout your candidacy as someone that they know and, can speak to your skills and, you'd be a great fit and everything like that. Because if you've already sent your resume in, bringing one if there was a receptionist or a front desk person, bringing one and just handing it off almost might seem like you're desperate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, not for that.
Yeah.
But that said, if you do interview in person and you want to bring a little thank you card with you, leave the building, go fill it out, come back in. That I've seen people do that pre-pandemic. Once in a while, people would do that, and that's kind of nice, hand deliver it back to the organization. You were just there. You could do that. All right, anything else? Okay. Oh, Vern, do you want to talk about Contacts Count now? We haven't done this in a while, and I know you've had a new launch and you've got a new little program. Do you want to talk about what you're doing?
Sure. Well, the official launch was May 23rd. And so the website is live and people can buy products and all of that good stuff. And I'm really focused right now on, now that the website is launched, doing whatever I can to market and promote, the brand. You can, one of the things you can do if you just want a quick, free 5-minute test of your networking skills, you can go on the website, contactscount.com, and you'll see a place for a free assessment. It's kind of a mini assessment of your networking skills. And if you're interested in diving further, there's a more in-depth networking assessment. And I've actually had several people who've taken the networking competency assessment, and then there's the option to then have like a 90-minute coaching call after they've taken the assessment to go in a lot deeper and get some feedback on that. And then the other major product that we have available is an online program, which is an in-depth 6-hour online program that talks about, of the 8 competencies that Contacts Count has, the first 4 are what we consider foundational. And so this online program covers everything in those first 4 competencies, and it's highly interactive. And we've spent a lot of time. I mean, this program will take you 5 to 6 hours to complete. Most importantly, what we recommend is for people to take it over some length of time. Don't try to do it in a week, because there's plenty of exercises and practice things that we recommend. Once you learn a skill, if you're really going to get good at networking, you have to go do it. You have to try it. Okay. Even things as simple as when you're asked the "what do you do" question, how do you answer that question in a way that actually engages the other person? And so there's lots of skills and behaviors that we teach. And what we find with the networking competency assessment is the average score for most people on those 8 competencies is somewhere between 50 and 60. So it continues to tell us that people simply don't know how to network, or they're just not equipped, or they haven't learned the skills. And in the best cases, when we start with someone and they take that networking competency assessment, and then we go through a program, they improve their scores. And the online program is actually set up that way. The very first thing you do is take the assessment before you start the online program. And then we recommend, after you finish the online program, you have the option to take another networking competence assessment. We'll give yourself some time to actually practice and gain confidence in the skills, and then take it again and see the impact that it's had for you. So
Is the score 50 and 60? Is that out of 100?
it's out of 100. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's based on 100. So and so, as I said, most of what I'm doing is doing a lot of marketing promotions, and currently working with a biotech firm here in Southwest Florida to do a presentation to their directors sometime in September. So again, plenty of evidence that networking is the #1 predictor of career success. Who you know, and it's not so much who you know, but it's how much do they know about you,
Yeah.
right? Because if they're gonna recommend you, if they're gonna promote you, the more they know about who you are, what your skills are, what you're looking for, the greater impact they can have when they're communicating with anybody in their network.
And do they know you, like you, and trust you?
Trust you. Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
So, in fact, some of you may remember Holly Martinson, who was, a member of this group for quite a while. And I'll tell you one real quick networking story. So Holly, through this group, she really gained clarity as she started her job search and figuring out what she wanted to do. And as she gained clarity, it was easier for her to network with other people. And she was able to get more specific about, here's who I am, here's what I want. And so not everybody she talked to could help her, but there were a few people that could help her in terms of her journey, in terms of the coaching that she wanted to do, this executive function coaching. And understand this is the tagline from, is the power of human connection. If I'm telling Shira about Ty and I'm promoting Ty to Shira now has the opportunity, if she so chooses, to reach out to people in her network or to recommend, in other words, reach out. She can connect Ty to people in her network who she knows might be able to help Ty, because Ty's done a great job of teaching Shira who he is, what he's all about, what he's looking for, and so forth and so on. And then you have the added benefit. In some cases, this is just sometimes I shake my head and I said, how does this happen? So executive function coaching, executive management function coaching is really focused on people who are neurodiverse. And it's not something that I know a lot about. So I talked to a good friend of mine who's an executive coach. And I said, Jeff, you know anything about executive function coaching? He smiled and he said, yeah, I know a lot. I said, really? I mean, he's an executive coach, business coach. He said, I just finished a 6-month coaching assignment with one of the world's most prominent executive function coaches. I said, you gotta be kidding me. So he's telling me what he learned. And I said, is there any possibility, her name is Elle O'Flaherty. I said, is there any possibility that you believe Elle might be willing to talk to Holly? And he said, sure, let's make it happen. And so Holly, who's now exploring this, gets to have an informational interview with one of the world's most prominent executive function coaches. And Holly, couldn't say enough positive things. She was gracious, she was helpful, she helped me with technology, she did all these things.
And so think about everything that Vern just said as it relates to who do you network with? Okay. So there are a couple of concepts here. One concept is the one that I talk about in terms of like a fish pond, right? Go fish where the fish are. That's one concept. And it's a very important one. You're an association person in, right? You're swimming with the association peeps and that kind of thing, right? Your technology, yes, you absolutely need to do that. Full stop. And look at what Vern just talked about. Holly came to this group. This group is a bunch of diverse fish. We got purple fish and green fish and blue fish and all kinds of fish and all kinds of ponds. Okay. So Holly was a purple fish. She was right. And Vern, if you just look at Vern's background, Holly and Vern don't have a whole lot in common just on the outside.
Right.
But who knew that Vern happened to know this colleague who knew a colleague, blah, 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 and all of a sudden she had this fabulous connection. So both are true. Fish where the fish are, go to your tribe, go to your community, go to your pond, and keep networking with people from very diverse ponds, because you never know who knows who. Both. That's good. That's a very encouraging story, Vern. Thanks for sharing.
It's, in fact, the executive coach that I reached out to, Jeff, was introduced to me by Sharon Armstrong, who Shira knows. Sharon is in DC. I knew Sharon very well when I was in DC. And when I moved to Naples, Sharon called me and she said, you need to meet Jeff Kopel. Jeff and I worked together early in our careers for 5 or 6 years. She says, I know the two of you guys would just hit it off.
You never know.
And lo and behold, that was like 5 or 6 years ago. And Jeff is based pretty much in New York, but he has a place in Naples. He comes here every 3 months. Every 3 months, Jeff and I have breakfast. And we've been having breakfast for like 5 years now, like every 3 months. And now I know a lot about Jeff and he knows a lot about me. We know about our families. We know a lot about each other. We know what baseball teams we like. And that's how the relationship happened. Other than if it wasn't for Sharon, I would have never met this person.
Right. Keep networking.
Yeah. So,
Keep teaching and giving, as Vern likes to say.
so and so that's why I'm just so passionate about everything that Context Count created, the founders of Context Count, what they created, and just want to carry their legacy into the future. Because I just know what an impact it can have on, people's individuals' lives, both their personal and their professional lives.
All right, my friends. Anything else? Okay. All right, well, we'll wrap up the formal portion here. And those who want to stand for prayer call, you are more than welcome. Blessed day, everyone.